Shalom. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahabashai, Bahashem, Rakhakudash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, because those are the men who I learned the truth from through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahabashai. Yahweh is the true name of the God of Israel. Yahabashai, which the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, but his one and only true name is Yahabashai. And pretty much I want to do this video about what is salvation. Now, the definition for salvation is being delivered from harm or ruin. Now, the focal point of prophecy, according to the Bible, is in the end times, Babylon the Great, which is America, according to the scriptures. Now, everybody is familiar with, the lake of fire. The lake of fire is a prophecy that's going to happen in America, because Babylon the Great, aka Mystery Babylon the Great, that is America. All right, because Babylon the Great is the last kingdom pretty much to rule on the planet Earth through the rulership of the Edomites in these last days. The scriptures say in 2nd Ezra 6 and 9, Esau is the end of the world, meaning at the end of this present age, the Edomites, which is the so-called white man in Ceylon, they would be ruling over Babylon the Great, as well as the EU nations. And together, that makes up the image of the beast, which ultimately is his system and everything it stands for, such as westernization, democracy and man-made religions, all these different agendas like feminism, the sodomite agenda, Hollywood, the way how they control and govern the people, the minds of the people. All right, that's through their image, that's through their system. So these people are ruling. That's why you see their face on the dollar, right? The World Economic Forum, you see them there. All these major summit meetings with all these countries that come together, even the United Nations. All right, just because particular tribes is mainly scattered in those particular regions, like a Mexico or Colombia, Argentina, there's still Edomites that's ruling over those specific lands. All right. So let's get into it. And we need to understand that salvation is only for the elect of the nation of Israel. All right, because it was already predestined who's going to be a part of the elect of the nation of Israel, who's going to be a part of the remnant, the tabernacle of David. The first fruits, as the scriptures say, is the elect of the nation of Israel. All right, the first spirits created through the will of the Most High by Yahushua himself. And throughout their particular generations, they will follow the Lamb, which is Yahushua, whithersoever he goeth, meaning that they will worship Yahushua, even if they got to be persecuted or humiliated on the planet Earth. No matter what they got to go through, they will bear their cross. Why? Because that's how we are programmed, through predestination. So when you're talking about salvation, you got to bring up predestination, and you got to bring up grace and mercy through the blood and sacrifice of Yahushua. All right? Because you got a lot of people, when you hear them talk, they don't really talk like they under grace. They don't really talk like, the Most High through Yahushua is in control. They talk as if they got the power to seal the elect. And no, it's Yahweh through Yahushua, through the gift of faith, through the Holy Spirit. All right, the Most High through Yahushua uses us to what? Preach His word as chosen vessels. So everything we do is through Yahweh in the name of Yahushua, Yahweh Bahashem Yahushua. So when you speak and talk like that, all right, give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh and Yahushua. Stop talking like if you got the power to deliver yourself, or you gave yourself this knowledge. It don't work like that. So when you go on Google and you type in salvation meaning, it says preservation or deliverance, right? Because what's prophesied to turn into a lake of fire? The landmass of Babylon the Great, which is America, by nuclear destruction. So this upcoming world war, right? Which a world war is what? Multiple countries having global conflicts around the world. And it just so happens that it was prophesied in the scriptures that the last global conflict in the form of a world war, right, would be fought with nuclear missiles, nuclear capability, hypersonic missiles, all right? So we need deliverance from that. Because how the hell can you deliver yourself from a nuclear missile or nuclear destruction? There's no missile defense system pursuant to what? Second Ezra's, the 16th chapter, like at verses 13 through 16. There's no missile defense system that can stop a hypersonic missile or multiple nuclear missile warheads. So we need divine intervention, all right? And that divine intervention is going to come by the way of Yahweh, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, all right? So we can't deliver ourselves being in this sinful flesh. So it says from harm, ruin, or loss. So that's what's prophesied to happen, all right? Babylon the Great is going to be destroyed by its allies, as well as Russia, Iran, and their allies, all right? They're going to shoot thermonuclear missiles and destroy this place. But before the missiles hit its target, which is America, turning it into a lake of fire, the elect of the nation of Israel all around the earth simultaneously is going to be beamed up, abducted by so-called spaceships, so-called UFOs. And that's how we're going to receive salvation. So when you bringing up salvation, you got to talk about so-called UFOs, predestination, all right? As well as the new covenant as well. Because when we receive salvation, that's the beginning of the nation of Israel stepping into that new covenant, all right? To where we're going to be immortal. Because in order for you to be immortal, that means that what? That means you can't sin. That means you're not going to sin, all right? So let's read the theology. All right, it says deliverance from sin and its consequences, right? Which the consequences for the Israelites is what? That we broke the law, statutes, and commandments. That's why we went into captivity all these different times, and that's why we're going through the curses of Deuteronomy 28th chapter, as well as Leviticus 26. It says, believed by Christians, the original Christians, when you read Acts, the 6th chapter and the 11th chapter, they were Jews that followed the Messiah, all right? The word Christian, when you read the Bible, is not applied to all nations in a general sense, as if you can't convert or become a spiritual Israelite. That's not in the Bible, all right? The blood and sacrifice of Yahweh is for those that's under the law, that believe and have faith on Yahweh, which is only Israelites that what? That's a part of the elect, all right? So it says to be brought about by faith in Hamashiach Yahweh. So that's it. So this is Matthew chapter 24 and 29. Which these few couple of verses is going into what? A prophecy that's going to happen in the last days. So another thing you need to understand is once the nuclear missiles are shot off, all right, the elect of the nation of Israel is going to receive salvation before the nuclear missiles hit Babylon the Great. And wherever other countries is prophesied to be hit by the nuclear missiles. All right, the elect is going to be beamed up, abducted by spaceships. All right, that's how we're going to be delivered from harm or ruin, which is salvation. All right, so Matthew 24 and 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days, right, shall the sun be darkened. So we've seen a lot of these signs take place: solar eclipse, right, lunar eclipses, blood moons, different signs in the heavens, right, so-called chariot of Israel sightings, which is the so-called UFO, UAP sightings, right? And we know that the so-called UFOs, they're operated by actual spiritual beings because the vehicle itself is spiritual, all right? Wherever the angel wants to go, pursuant to Ezekiel, the first chapter, that's where the flying saucer or the chariot of Israel is going to go. When you read that chapter, it gives you the explanation on how those vehicles operate, all right? So it says, be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars of heaven shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man. So the Son of Man, being that great millstone, is prophesied to come when? During the last days, all right? When the Edomites is back in their rulership, ruling over America, ruling over the EU nation, ruling the whole entire planet Earth through their centralized system, all right? That's when Yahweh Shai, that great millstone, is going to come back to judge the Edomites and take them out of rulership through the act of war. All right, because when you look at any empire that was a rulership, ultimately, yeah, there was a economic decline. There was, morality decline amongst the people. You had economic collapses like with Greece, Rome, and the same thing is happening in America and the EU, and ultimately around the world, because it's going to be a global economic collapse. All right. So Yahushua being that great millstone, he's going to break that statue, pursuing the day, the second chapter, all right, of the heathen nations ruling on the planet Earth. So it goes on to say, and they shall see, let me start up. It says, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Now, the clouds of heaven is talking about what? The so-called UFOs, the chariots of Israel. Let's go into this word clouds. Strong's G 3507. Okay, the Greek word for clouds, Strong's G 3507, which is Napthali. Let's go down here. It says a cloud. Use of the cloud which led the Israelites in the wilderness. All right. So what you need to understand is that pillar of fire by night, cloud by day, that was leading, meaning that it was a moving vehicle. All right. A so-called flying saucer, a so-called UFO, UAP, a spaceship. Right. It was Yahweh ultimately, and in the form of an angel in the vehicle that was leading the Israelites through the wilderness, as it tells you, I believe in it's either in First or Second Corinthians, the 10th chapter. I think you can start at 1, and the point is in like verse 5. All right, but the point is, the word Nephilim is referring to what? A moving vehicle, a chariot of Israel, spaceship. All right. So when you go into this word clouds, right, it's letting you know it's a moving vehicle. I mean, clearly you can look up at the sky and see there's already clouds there. So that ain't something we gotta wait for. I mean, you could just wake up in the morning if you got the privilege to do that. All right, go outside or look through your window, your balcony, your terrace, patio, whatever. Look up at the sky. You can see clouds up there. So it ain't talking about that. That's too easy. All right, it's talking about an actual vehicle, because that's how the angels travel. They travel inside of so-called UFOs. All right. So now let's read this. So going back, it says clouds of heaven. So it's making a difference. It's not just talking about, regular clouds. All right. It says clouds of heaven. So it's making a distinction. It says with power and great glory, referring to the so-called UFOs, because that's what the scripture is talking about when it talks about white horse. All right. The white horse is referring to is what? Pure heavenly power in the form of a chariot of Israel, spaceship. Verse 31, it says, and he shall send his angels. The he is referring to Yahushua, and his angels are inside of what? The Nephali, the clouds of heaven, or the chariots of Israel, right? So-called UFOs. He shall send his angels, meaning what? He's giving them a command, because Yahushua is a man of war. Remember, he's coming in wage war on the Edomites and the other nations. All right, that's why when you read Revelation, the 12th chapter, it mentions, well, war in heaven. Michael and his angels, because the Lord also has to deliver us not only just from the nuclear destruction, but from what? Jacob's trouble, as it says in Daniel 12:1. So Jacob's trouble is an ongoing time period until Yahweh comes back, because all hell is going to break loose in the form of what? A global economic collapse. There's going to be persecution upon Israelites that to call yourself an Israelite, right? Because they're going to label it as treason, just like how they did during the first beast, the ancient Roman Empire. So we're going to need deliverance from Jacob's trouble. We're going to need deliverance from the nuclear destruction. All right, so it says, with a great sound of a trumpet, and he shall gather together his elect from the four winds, north, south, east, and west, from one end of heaven to the other. So that's who's being delivered. That's who Yahweh Shai is sending his angels to gather together inside of what? The so-called UFOs. All right, let's go into this word elect, because this is a concept that Christians don't really teach. They don't talk about the elect. They don't link up the elect to being the remnant, the first fruits, the tabernacle of David, the ones that's going to receive salvation. They don't link it up with predestination. All right. So the Greek word for elect is electos in the Greek, and it says from the Strong's info by implication favorite. So among the seed of Israel, amongst the nation of Israel, out of all the 12 tribes, the Lord has an elect that's within the 12 tribes of Israel. All right, by implication favorite. So he has a favorite, right? Chosen, elect. So who are some of the Lord's favorites? Well, all the elect, but men like King David, right? Men like Aaron, all the prophets that you read about, the 12 disciples, right? Men like Ezekiel, Isaiah, Samuel, men like that. Enoch. Let's go to the biblical usage. It says picked out, chosen. So they was what? Predestinated to be the elect. They was picked out and chosen by who? The Most High, through Yahushua. It says chosen by the Most High. Going back to what? Predestination. So when you're talking about salvation, you got to bring up the elect and you got to bring up predestination. It says to obtain salvation through Hamashiach Yahushua. Because ultimately we're being saved through grace and not by works. It says Christians, and who's the original Christians? Pursuing the Acts, the 6th and the 11th chapter, Jews that followed the Messiah, or Israelites, right, in general, are called chosen or elect of the Most High. It says the Messiah is called elect as appointed by the Most High to the most exalted office conceivable, which is what? Being a high priest. So he's our high priest, he's our mediator, and he's our savior, all right? And he has given him, pursuant to Philippians, the 2nd chapter, a name that's above every other name. It's not hard to understand. It says choice, select, i.e., the best of its kind of class. So the best of its kind, which would be the 12 tribes of Israel, is who? The elect of the nation of Israel. Or class excellence, preeminent, applied to certain individual Christians. All right, meaning Jews or Israelites that follow the Messiah. Which the word Christian is a derogatory term. Like, oh, look at them Christians, right? So it says, yep, from the four winds, because the elect is scattered through the four corners of the earth. Going back to the curse of Deuteronomy 20 and 64, how we was going to be scattered, which represents what? All the captivities we've been in, but all the slave trades. Not just the transatlantic, but Indian Ocean slave trade, British, Dutch. I mean, there's a bunch of slave trades that took place to fulfill what was written in the scriptures. All right? So let's go from there, and let's go to Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 5, and verse 2. It says, and remember, the Apocrypha is a part of the Old Testament. It says, Wisdom of Solomon 5 and 2, when they see it, who's the they? Now, the scriptures talk about what? How people is going to be wailing when they see Yahushua. They're going to be scared, right? But ultimately referring to what? When they see the so-called UFOs. When they see it, they shall be troubled with terrible fear. They troubled right now. That's why they don't really want to talk about it on mainstream media. All right, they try to shoot a missile at the so-called UFO, and the so-called UFO videos I've seen is zigzag out the way, as if the missile was moving in slow motion, because we know the time in the heavens is faster, and the way how the ships can move, when you read in Ezekiel the 1st chapter, it says it's fast as a flash of lightning. Now, we don't know for sure how fast the speed of lightning is, but when you go on Google, it's like over 186,000 miles per hour. So that's fast. So a so-called UFO being a spiritual vehicle, inside of the vehicle, it's a spiritual being. The UFO and the being that's operating the so-called UFO, which would be the angel, they're incorruptible. Meaning what? They can't decay. They're immortal. They're perfect. So all these different videos you've seen, like all the Roswell alien, well, that's a hoax. All right. All these different news articles and videos you've seen, oh, so-called UFO crash. That's bullshit. How can something incorruptible and perfect crash? Something that you don't even understand where it comes from. You don't even know how it operates. First of all, so-called UFO, a chariot of Israel, is flying in the sun. It's sucking in the plasma from the sun inside of the vehicle. How do you defeat something like that? Something that could disable your top weapon arsenal in the form of a missile. So all them videos you seen, that was a lie. All right? So it goes on to say, when they see it, they shall be troubled with terrible fear. Because they're going to be like, what the fuck is going on here? They're going to be looking at the sky. You know, the so-called UFOs is going to be making noises. They're going to think it's a real life alien invasion, which the word alien, it just means foreign, because that's how Yahushua is coming back, as a foreign angelic being that people never seen face to face, right? It says, and shall be amazed at the strangeness of his salvation, singular, his salvation, referring to who? The elect of the nation of Israel, all right? So when Yahushua returns back, he's coming back to establish the kingdom of heaven on earth as prophesied, but he's also coming back to what? To bring salvation to the elect. And us receiving salvation is us stepping first into the new covenant. That's why it says in Revelation, the 20th chapter, which I got that precept lined up, it mentions that what? That we have the privilege of being a part of the first resurrection and first dominion, which is us stepping into that new covenant when we receive salvation. Because when we receive salvation, we're going to be changed out of these vile bodies into immortal bodies. So it says, so far beyond all that they look for, all right? Because it's going to be a miraculous deliverance. It's going to be a deliverance that people never thought or dreamed of, even though they was warned through the YouTube videos, through the street ministries, right? So that's going to be an amazing thing. And Lord willing, I hope to be a part of that. Now, when you read about Enoch being receiving salvation or being beamed up, all right, that's like a how do you say it? That's like a prelude to the elect being beamed up. You know, not seeing death, as the scriptures say, because even the Lord said that. He said it's going to be some of you standing here that's not going to taste of death, because the scriptures talk about that. You know, the ones that died in the faith, they're going to be risen up first in the so-called UFOs, the chariots of Israel, to receive salvation, to meet the Lord in the air. And then also the ones that's alive and remain, that's not going to taste of death. All right. Not everybody is going to be beheaded and get put to death. All right. But you want to have that mindset that, look, you know, that if you're faced with that, then you know what you have to do. You have to deny that mark of the beast, which is the RFID chip implant. All right. You got to say no to that chip and choose death. You know, be a martyr. Die for your religious belief. That's what a martyr is. So it says in Christian theology, the account of Enoch being taken by Yahweh serves as a unique event that foreshadows, that's another good word to use, foreshadow or prelude, right? And confirms the broader grace-based salvation made possible through Yahweh Shah Mashiach, right? So Enoch being beamed up, right? That's how the elect is going to be beamed up into the so-called UFOs. The same way how Yahweh Shah, he was resurrected, that's the same way he's going to come back. And that's how we're going to be resurrected or beamed up, right? So let's read this. First Thessalonians chapter 4. I'm going to start at verse 13. So this is First Thessalonians chapter 4 and verse 13. It says, but I will not have you ignorant. Now remember, this is a letter that was sent to the Israelites that was in Thessalonica, all right? Because, you know, a lot of times when Paul sent these letters out, you know, he was in prison or jail, you know, for preaching his word, which is a prelude of what's going to happen to us, how we're going to be persecuted. You already got people doing that now. When they do these podcasts, they do these interviews, they bring up false accusations upon great millstone. Well, when you read Romans 15:4, the things written aforetime is written for our learning. So the same similar events that happened in the book of Acts, well, this is the book of Acts all over again. So it's going to be same similar ways of persecution that's going to happen to the men of the Lord. All right. First Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 13. First Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 13. But I will not have you ignorant. I will not have you to be ignorant, brethren. In order for you to be Paul's brethren, you have to come from the same seed that Paul came from. All right. When you look at the nation of Israel, the seed is divided into what? 12 tribes, all right? But we're all the same seed, meaning the promises that was given to Abraham, passed down to Isaac, then to Jacob. Jacob name was changed to Israel. Them promises and those blessings only refer to that seed. And we know that men carry the seed is the sperm. So nations get their name and they're established to what? The seed of their fathers, right? So that's who Paul brethren is. So that's how you know this letter is written to what? His kinfolk. It says concerning them which are asleep, because you had men that died in the faith. I'll give you an example. In this lifetime, Abba Bivens, Elder High Priest Yaquab, King Marshall, right? Other elders that I may not know, you know, the other prophets, the other believers, the other helps, because you have different offices that make up the third temple, which is a spiritual temple, right? You even had brothers in the camp that I'm in that passed away, right? So this is what Paul's saying. It says that ye sorrow not. Don't be sorry, because we're gonna meet him again. It says, even as others which have no hope. Yeah. See, the reason why them people crying is because what? They thinking that they never gonna see their loved ones again. Because they don't understand life after death. They don't understand the new covenant. They don't understand the process of reincarnation, right? So they don't have no hope because they think when they die, that's just it. But that's far from the truth. That's far from what's written in the scriptures. Verse 14, it says, for if we believe that Yahushua died and rose again, right? He was resurrected after 72 hours or 72 hours. It says, even so them, the ones that died in the faith, the believers, even so them also will sleep in Yahushua will Yahweh bring with him. So they're going to be with Yahushua, all right? So when Yahushua makes his glorious second coming, as Christians call it, right? He's coming back with the believers as well. It goes on to say, yep, for this we say unto you by the word of the Lord. It says that we which are alive will remain. So not everybody's going to be beheaded. Not every Israelite is going to get put to death during Jacob's trouble. All right, because you got to understand, when you read about the hour of temptation, it's an hour of temptation, meaning it's a specific time period when the so-called white man worldwide is going to make mandatory the mark of the beast, which is the RFID chip implant, into which you can't buy or sell. That's why they're pushing for what? All the currencies to be made digital. Whether it's a stable coin or a central bank digital currency, it could be tied to a physical device. The same way how we use debit cards. You got particular people now that use the RFID, NFC chip, brain chip implant, right? Because that specific device is tied to what? The financial infrastructure, all right? The world economy, currency. So when the mark of the beast is made mandatory, it's going to be tied to whatever currency, right, that specific country has. So that's what you need to understand. And there ain't going to be no other option to buy and sell with precious metals, cryptocurrency, decentralized currencies. You're not going to have the option or privilege to buy and sell any type of way you want during the hour of temptation. Well, that's why it's called the hour of temptation. All right. Because in order for you to buy and sell and participate in these world economies, right, you're going to have to worship the God of this world, which is Satan, and his physical counterpart, the so-called white man is ELAM, in order for you to buy and sell. So you as an Israelite, that comes with what? Denying your God, denying your Messiah, denying the truth. 1 Thessalonians 4:15, for this we say unto you by the word of the Lord, that we which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trump of the Most High, and the dead in Hamashiach shall rise first. All right, so that's what's gonna happen. All the brothers and sisters that died in the faith once upon a time, they're gonna be risen first. It says, then, this is after now, then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up. Caught up meaning what? Abducted by spaceships, all right? Beamed up by so-called UFOs. From that point of us being beamed up, we're going to be changed and put into immortal, angelic, godly bodies, all right? We're going to be extraterrestrial because we know angels, they don't have sex, they don't produce sperm, all right? They could just create through the will of the Most High. They do whatever the Most High programmed them to do. They obey the will of the Most High. All right, and they do that perfectly. So we're gonna have the benefits of being angelic and being human to enjoy the pleasures of sex and reproducing. All right. What exactly is that body gonna look like? Well, we gotta be there to experience that. So when you read the scriptures, you don't need to know every single little thing. You just know that what that we gonna be changed. But there's certain things, like the scriptures say, we know in part and prophesy in part. So you gotta be there to experience it. All right. See, Christians, I'm not gonna go there. It says with them in the clouds, right? Naphtali, talk about actual moving vehicles, a spaceship, to meet the Lord in the air. The Lord is going to be in the air because he's going to be in what? A enormous fathership that's so big it pretty much is going to cover the top half of the earth. Because when Ezra looked up in his vision, when you read 2nd Ezra 13th chapter, he looked up and he couldn't see where the ship was graven, meaning he couldn't see the end point of the ships. Because in his vision, he's looking up at the sky in the air, and he's looking up, down, east, west, and he can't see the endings of the ship. That's how big it is. All right, it's just like in them alien invasion movies. It says, to meet the Lord in the air, and so shall we ever be with the Lord, because we're stepping into the new covenant. All right. Once we step into the new covenant, we can never sin again. So we will never depart from Yahweh or Yahushua. All right. And that's because of Yahushua's sacrifice. It says, wherefore comfort one another with these words. So this is comforting. All right. This is what the scriptures say. What? Don't let your sins weigh you down. Because through the blood and sacrifice of Yahushua, all man of sin could be forgiven. All right. But if you take that mark of the beast, you can't be forgiven on this side for that. You got to be destroyed. All right. Now let's go here. Isaiah 26:20. It says, come my people, who's the Lord's people, the seed that he made the covenants with, which is the Israelites, right? It says, come my people into thy chambers. All right, talk about what? Us going through that tractor beam, being beamed up into the so-called UFOs. That's the chambers, and being beamed up into the ships. It says, and shut the doors about thee, right? It says, and hide thyself, as it were, for a little moment until the indignation be overpassed. So we know the word indignation, it means righteous anger, because the Most High is righteous for allowing Babylon the Great to be predestinated unto destruction by nuclear missiles. Because look at this shit, man. Look at the dating culture here, the mindsets of the people, the way our people try to use the Bible to forward westernization and evil agendas. This shit is absolutely out of control. It gotta go. All right. It says, and shut thy doors about thee, hide thyself as a word for a little moment, because the nuclear destruction gonna be taking place. You don't want to be on earth when that take place until the indignation be overpassed. So we're being delivered from ruin. All right. This is a salvation scripture. We're being delivered from ruin. Right. Until what? That indignation be overpassed. Then it's going to go into what? Revelation, the 21st chapter, how John said he saw New Jerusalem ascending out of heaven, all right? Because we're going to be new. We're going to have those new bodies, all right? We're going to be perfect. So once that indignation be overpassed through the command of Yahweh Yahushua, then when we get out of them ships, we're going to put the heathen nations in slavery, all right? Hardcore slavery for 1,000 years. After the 1,000 years, the Edomites, as a seed, as a nation, they're going to be burnt up. Pursuant to Obadiah, the 1st chapter, Deuteronomy 25th chapter, all throughout the scriptures. I could name a couple of them. All right? So that's what's going to take place. It says, so that's it. So now, here's another one. This is Revelation 18 and verse 4. It says, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, come out of her, my people. Who's the Lord's people? The elect of the nation of Israel. It says that ye be not partakers of her sins, right? It says, and that ye receive not of her plagues. And what's her plagues? The plague is all about the nuclear destruction, nuclear missiles, for her sins have reached up unto heaven, and the Most High have remembered her iniquities. All right, so that's what's going to take place. Now let's read this. First John chapter, First John chapter 3 and verse 2. It says, beloved, now are we the sons of the Most High, and it doeth not appear what we shall be. Yeah, the scripture said we know in part, so we prophesy in part. We don't know exactly how the new bodies is going to look. We make illustrations, all right, based off of what? The descriptions of angels, based off of the description of the Messiah. It said we're going to be like him in the verse I'm reading. So we try to put two and two together. We try to use the AI generated images, but we don't actually know what that looks like. All right, we got to be there to experience that. You know, ain't nothing wrong with making illustrations, but at the end of the day, those specific images, that's not what the Most High look like. That's not what the Messiah look like. We don't know how we're going to look when we get those new bodies. All right. It says, and as long as you don't worship these images in the form of idolatry, it says, yep, beloved, now are we the sons of Yahweh, and it doeth not yet appear what we shall be. We know we're going to be extraterrestrial. It says, but we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, angelic, all right, extraterrestrial, having the benefits or the powers of an angel, and still having the benefits of a mortal, which is to sexually reproduce, eat, drink, sleep if we want, right? So it says, yep, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. So we're going to actually see Yahweh eye to eye to know exactly what he looks like. So that's it with that. Now let's get this. This is Revelation chapter 20 and verse 5. It says, but the rest of the dead live not again until the 1,000 years were finished. Now, the 1,000 years is referring to what? The heathen nations going into captivity, hard captivity for over 1,000 years, for 1,000 years. All right. Now, after the 1,000 years, as I stated earlier, the nation of Edom, they're not going to exist no more on the planet Earth. Whatever the Most High does with the spirits, that's between, the Most High. But the scriptures say that that seed of Edom, being known as the Edomites, they're not going to exist. All right. And when you die, you come back through the seed of your fathers. So you come back as the same nature you was previously in previous generations. All right. So the Edomites, they're not going to exist no more. That's what the scriptures say. So it goes on to say, yep, till the 1,000 years were finished. So the heathen nations, they're going to be in their lands, but they're going to learn to keep the law, statutes, and commandments to the best of their abilities. Since they're going to be in the flesh, that means that what? They're not going to be able to keep the laws perfectly because they don't have the privilege of, being a part of new covenant, getting immortal bodies, and keeping the law perfectly. They can never do that in the flesh because we couldn't do that and we're in the flesh right now. All right. So once them 1,000 years is finished, they'll still be in servitude, but it'll pretty much take 1,000 years to, you know, control and, train these heathen nations to keep the laws to the best of their abilities, according to the way how Yahweh wants. So it says, this is the first resurrection. It says, blessed and holy is he, the elect of the nation of Israel, that have part in the first resurrection, right? On such the second death, which is the nuclear destruction, right? Fire, have no power, but they shall be priests of the Most High and of Hamashiach, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. Because it's going to take 1,000 years for the kingdom of heaven to be built up on the planet Earth. All right. So when you hear us say the heathen nations, they're going to go into captivity for 1,000 years, well, these are the two verses, Revelation 25 and Revelation 26. All right. So that's it with that. Now let's go back to this, because like I said, when you talk about salvation, you have to bring up predestination. All right. Ephesians chapter 1 and verse 4. It says, according as he hath chosen us, the elect of the nation of Israel, aka the first fruits, aka the remnant, aka the tabernacle of David, right? Chosen us in him, in Yahushua, before the foundation of the world, before the earth was even created, that we, the elect of the nation of Israel, should be holy and without blame before him in love. That's through the blood and sacrifice of Yahushua, right? Having predestinated us. I love this scripture. Let's go into this word predestinated. Because when you could just bring up particular words, it's just so simple for everything to just gel together in synergy, right? So when you go into this word predestination, I'm going to let the Greek word play.
Strong's G 4309. Praarizo. Praarizo.
Priorities, all right? Yep. Strong's info, it says to determine before ordained predestinate. So when you hear people say, "Oh, it's my destiny to do this," or even certain people that say, "Oh, I wish I could take that back," or that's a sign of what? That you're not in control. You never was in control to begin with. Going back to what? Proverbs, the 16th chapter, first like 4 verses. Proverbs, the 20th chapter. I think it's like verse 24, right? So you don't have the power to control how your life is going to turn out. It's already predestinated. Who's going to be a part of the elect, right? Who's going to serve the Lord and who's not, right? So we can't change our destinies because the Most High already preordained how our lives is going to turn out from beginning to end, even before we come back on the planet Earth. Go down here. Biblical usage to predetermine, decide beforehand. So it was already decided through the will of the Most High who's going to be a part of the elect, who's going to take the mark of the beast, and who's not, right? Who's going to play the role of this on earth, no matter what it is. It says decide beforehand in the New Testament of Yahweh decreeing from eternity, right? To foreordain a point beforehand. So this is why you hear brothers say, "Oh, we hope and pray we are part of the elect," because we don't know how our destinies is going to play out. We don't know how the Most High predestined our beginning and our end. If we going to remain in the truth unto the end, or we going to be fallouts. All right, so let's jump back. So Ephesians chapter 1, verse 5, it says, "Having predestinated us." Who's the us? The elect of the nation of Israel, unto the adoption of children, meaning what? To be brought back to the Most High, right? Through the blood and sacrifice of Yahweh. That's where the adoption comes from. And the adoption is only for who? The elect of the nation of Israel. That through the blood and sacrifice of Yahweh, being the author and finisher of our faith, we could be adopted back, or we could be called a son of Yahweh again because of Yahweh's blood and sacrifice. All right? By Yahweh Mashiach to himself according to the good pleasure of his will. His will go back to what? Predestination. All right? It says to pray to the praise of the glory of his grace. And what's grace? That the Most High, through Yahweh's blood and sacrifice, does not hold the elect of the nation of Israel to that old covenant standard that we can't keep in sinful flesh. These are things you need to understand, all right? Because you being in the truth, you all going to fuck up, all right? You all going to make stupid ass mistakes. You all supposed to know better. But remember, all of your actions, your thought, what you got planned, everything, the way how your life, turns out, that's all predestination through the will of the Most High. So however your life turns out, the good, the bad, the ugly, overcoming through Yahweh ultimately, that's through the will of the Most High. That's what he thought, you know, that's what he thought before the earth was even created. All right. So it says, yep. Wherein he have made us accepted in the beloved, in whom we, the elect, ultimately all Israel, have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins. Going back to what? Acts 5 and 31. So the blood and sacrifice of Yahweh is only for who? The elect of the nation of Israel. All right? It's only for Israel, the seed line of Israel. It's not for all nations. All nations was given the law. All right. Scriptures say what? To redeem them that was under the law. And who was given the law? The Israelites. All right. The so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native American Indians. We are the biblical Israelites. Whether people want to accept it or not, hey, time is going to tell, right? So that's it with that. Now we're going to finish it off with this. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8. For by grace are you saved through faith. All right. And not and that not of yourselves, it is the gift of the Most High, not of works, lest any man should boast. So you're not being saved off of how many videos you do technically, how many live streams, how long or how longer you've been in the truth before others, right? You're not being saved because of your reputation, your status, how much money you gave individual. You're not being saved because of that. You did all that because that's what the Most High predestinated you to do through the gift of faith we have in Yahweh. All right. Ultimately, we being saved through predestination, through the will of the Most High Yahweh, but ultimately because of what Yahweh Shai did to adopt us back to Yahweh. All right. So now let's read this in the NLT, and then I'm done with the lesson. NLT version. This is Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 8. It reads, Yahweh saved you by his grace when you believe, and you can't take credit for this. It is a gift from the Most High through Yahweh. Salvation is not a reward for the good things we have done, so none of us can boast about it. But the scriptures also say our righteousness is as filthy rags. All right. When we keep these high holy days, fast, do everything according to our customs, we doing that through faith ultimately, and we can't keep the laws perfectly. The scriptures say what? You break one sin. You break one sin. You break one law, you break all the laws. So if you sin once, you just broke all 613 laws, statutes, and commandments for this particular generation. So the only way to be right with the Most High is doing what He commanded, which is to have faith upon Yahweh Shai, who the world ignorantly called Jesus Christ, unto death. Even if you got to die to, prove your faith. So, that's pretty much it. Lord willing, he was edified. Shalom.